The rain had started lightly, turning the city streets into a mirror of neon reflections from the traffic lights above. Zara Ahmed, 19, wheeled herself along the cracked pavement, the wheels of her wheelchair splashing in shallow puddles. She had learned to navigate the city like this, memorizing uneven sidewalks, dodging loose bricks, and anticipating the gaps between the road and the curb. But even with experience, some days tested her patience, and today felt like one of those days. Sarah's hands were cold and slightly numb from the drizzle, the leather gloves she wore offering little protection. She had dressed quickly that morning, her favorite burgundy scarf wrapped tightly around her neck. Her dark hair, usually tied neatly into a ponytail, had strands clinging to her damp forehead. The accident 6 months ago had changed everything. Her independence, her freedom, her confidence, but she refused to let it erase her spirit entirely. Today, she was determined to go to the grocery store herself, despite the drizzle and the rush of city life around her. The street was bustling. People with umbrellas jostled past her, their eyes fixed downward, oblivious to her presence. Cars honked impatiently as they passed by, and the smell of wet asphalt mixed with exhaust fumes filled the air. She kept her head low, concentrating on maneuvering over the uneven pavement, trying to ignore the stares, or lack thereof, of strangers. As she approached the corner near a busy intersection, Sarah's wheelchair jolted violently. A deep pothole, partially hidden under the rainwater, had caught the front wheel. She tried to reverse, twisting her arms with force, but the wheelchair was stuck. The rain slicked her gloves, making the wheels harder to grip. Panic rose in her chest as she realized she couldn't free herself. "Help, please," she called, her voice trembling, but her words were swallowed by the city noise, horns, footsteps, and the hum of engines. People passed by, heads down, as though she wasn't there. A man with a briefcase hurried past without a glance. A young woman with headphones on barely noticed her struggle. Sarah's stomach twisted with a familiar ache, the ache of invisibility. She tried again, pushing with all her strength, but it was useless. The wheelchair wouldn't budge. She felt the familiar sting of tears forming, threatening to spill. Her heart raced, and for the first time in months, she felt entirely helpless in public, a vulnerable girl trapped in a city that never stopped to notice her. Then, a voice cut through the chaos. "Hey, are you okay?" Sarah blinked, turning her head toward the sound. A young man in his mid-20s was running toward her. He wore a grease-stained jacket over a black t-shirt, and his hands were already smudged with motor oil. Adil Khan, a 25-year-old mechanic from the nearby garage, had seen her struggle from across the street. Without hesitation, he sprinted over, his boots splashing through puddles, his dark hair plastered to his forehead from the rain. Sarah's breath caught. No one had ever run toward her before. People usually ran past. He knelt beside her wheelchair, his presence solid and reassuring. "You're stuck," he said, not with pity but with observation. His dark brown eyes were focused, calm, and completely undistracted by the bustling street around them. "Yes," Sarah whispered, unsure whether to trust this stranger. "Don't worry," he said, placing his large, strong hands gently on the wheelchair's frame. "I've got you." Sarah watched, astonished, as he examined the wheel. Within seconds, he found the problem, a small crack in the pavement that had trapped the front wheel. With practiced movements, he lifted the wheelchair slightly and maneuvered it free of the hole. The relief that washed over her was immediate, like a dam breaking inside her chest. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft but filled with genuine gratitude. Adil smiled. "No problem. It happens to the best of us," he replied, brushing the rain from his jacket. Then, noticing her wet gloves and shivering shoulders, he added, "Are you okay? Do you need to sit somewhere dry?" Sarah hesitated. Most people would have walked away after helping once. But there was something different about him, something in the steadiness of his gaze, the calm way he didn't treat her like a burden. She nodded, managing a small smile. "Yes, I think I'll be fine. I just didn't expect anyone to stop." Adil chuckled softly. "Well, lucky for you, I don't run past people." There was a pause as they both glanced around the street. Cars passed, oblivious. Pedestrians didn't notice them. And yet, in that small moment, Sarah felt seen. Truly seen, not as a girl in a wheelchair, but as a person. "You're very strong," Adil said suddenly, as if reading her thoughts. "But even the strongest people get stuck sometimes. It doesn't make you weak." Sarah felt her chest tighten at the words. Most people's pitying glances had made her feel smaller, but his words lifted her instead. I like to be independent," she admitted, a lump forming in her throat. "I can see that," he said. "And that's amazing. But everyone needs a hand now and then." For the next few minutes, they sat together on the curb, Sarah in her wheelchair, Adil kneeling beside her. The rain continued to fall, but somehow it didn't feel so cold anymore. Sarah noticed details she hadn't before. The way his hands were rough but gentle, the small streaks of oil on his forearm, the faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth as he listened to her stories about navigating the city streets, about the challenges she faced daily and the dreams she hadn't dared to voice to anyone else. He didn't ask intrusive questions. He didn't act uncomfortable around her wheelchair. Instead, he made small jokes to lighten the tension, offered tips for managing tricky streets, and helped her feel in control again. "You know," he said, leaning back on his heels, "there are a few shortcuts I know around here that are wheelchair-friendly. I could show you sometime if you want." Sarah looked at him, her eyes wide. Nobody had offered that before. People either avoided her or treated her like she was fragile. But he seemed to believe in her. And just like that, a small flicker of hope lit inside her chest, a hope she hadn't felt in months. "Maybe I'd like that," she whispered, a small smile breaking through. Adil nodded, returning the smile. "Great, it's a date." Not a date, just, navigating the city kind of date." Sarah laughed softly, a sound that felt rusty from disuse. The rain continued to fall around them, but for the first time that day, it felt like a background melody rather than a barrier. As they finally got up and Sarah wheeled herself forward with Adil's guidance for a few steps, she realized something profound. Even in a city that often overlooked her, someone had stopped. Someone had knelt beside her not to pity her, but to lift her. And in that simple act, Sarah's world felt just a little brighter. After that rainy afternoon, Sarah couldn't stop thinking about the mechanic who had helped her. Adil Khan, 25, had appeared like a calm presence in the chaos of her city life, a stranger who had knelt beside her when no one else would. That simple